Hello and welcome to Athletistry Ballet Evolution. My name is Shane Werthner. I will be your host, and every Friday I will be coming to you with new information about the ballet world, what I have experienced, the lessons that I have learned, and how I can help you to better improve your dancing, to improve your personal life, to improve your professional life, and to become the best person that you can possibly be. Excellence is the key word here, guys. I want to help you evolve to your most excellent form. So what are we going to do? Where are we going to start? We're going to start with my story, how I got here, what I'm doing here, and where I want to take this podcast and how I can support you guys as my listeners and as my viewers. So before you get started, I have one thing that I have to ask of you as you listen to this podcast. If it has helped you, if you learned something, if you laughed, if you enjoyed it, if you got something out of it, please share it with your friends. I'm not going to ever run ads on this podcast. That is not the point. I want to help people around the world. I want to support those dancers who are wanting to learn more and who are seeking the truth and who are trying to find the layers of existence that are hiding underneath all of the, let's say, BS in the dance world that is covering it up, okay? So let's get started with my story. Who am I? My name, as I said, my name is Shane Werthner. I am originally from San Francisco, California. I started my dance training at Marin Ballet, but that was not my initial purpose. I wanted to do lots of things. So my dad was quite ill as when I was a young boy, and he wanted me to be coordinated. Coordination was the key to my success at that point. So he thought, okay, well, let's put him into lots of different movement-based things, not necessarily competitive, but just things that were going to keep me active and moving and coordinated. So the arts was a big part of my start. I did a lot of musical theater, I did gymnastics, I did martial arts, I did dance, I did ballet, tap, ballroom eventually, and as I grew up, so as I started to move through my childhood, each one of those things would drop off and ballet seemed to become the more prominent one. And eventually, around the age of 10, I came into the opportunity to work with Mikko Nissinen, who was the director of Boston, who is the director of Boston Ballet now, but he was the director of Marin Ballet at the time that I was there. And so he brought some really incredible teachers, one of whom was Miss Stockkuhn. And Tamara Stockkuhn was an incredible figure. She was a principal dancer in Russia and had wonderful understanding of how to teach, how to engage, and she really saw good potential in me. And so I remember lots of discussions being had, and she eventually recommended that I go to the Kirov Academy of Ballet in Washington, D.C. So in 1999, I auditioned for the summer program at the Kirov Academy of Ballet, and I was probably one of 4,000 or 5,000 kids that auditioned that year, and one of the 125 kids that was accepted into the summer program and actually ended up attending. And so I went to the summer program and was offered a full year attendance to go to the school, and I didn't accept it. Because that was something, and you'll see as I go through this process, this is something that tends to happen. We get offers, and they're not always the offer that we expect, or maybe even that we're ready to accept, because there's other things in life. There are other opportunities, there are other obligations, there are other things that we have to be taking care of first. So I didn't accept it. My parents weren't ready for me to go and live alone at the school as a boarding student, and they weren't ready to send me away from home. It was all the way across the country in Washington, D.C. And so I didn't go, and I actually stayed in San Francisco for about another 3 months, and I was miserable. I didn't enjoy the training that I was getting at some of the programs that I was trying to emulate what Kirov was offering. And we decided that we would actually move. And so my parents uprooted their entire lives and they moved across the country for me, which was an amazing opportunity and something that I will forever be grateful to them for, because what ended up happening was 5 years of development in a class that I don't know, exists in many places. We had an incredible teacher by the name of Anatoly Kutruk, and he took this group of boys. There was like 5 of us, this core group of boys, and we were together from the age of 11 all the way through to 18. And we challenged each other and pushed each other daily. It was 6 days a week, 5 hours a day, just hard work and discipline and pushing each other to be better. And it led to all of us. I think everyone in that class ended up having a professional career. Now, my professional career nearly started in 2004. So I graduated from the Kirov in 2004. I was second in my class across the entire school. I had the highest grade point average 3 out of the 4 years in high school, so I was very successful in my time there. And I was only 16, so I ended up graduating a year early. And so I decided to look at what the options were. Now I had an offer from Royal Danish Ballet to go in as an apprentice. This was my first ever job offer. And then I also had an offer from American Ballet Theatre studio company. And they were both offers that were given to me from a program that came from the Royal Danish, Kennedy Center. So the Kennedy Center would have these programs that they would run every year where they would bring companies in to perform, and then those companies would run master classes for local students. And so I was taking the company class, the master class for the Royal Danish, and the ballet master came in and said, we would like to have you come take company class tomorrow. And so I did, and then they offered me an apprentice contract, and I said, oh, well, I'm 16, I need to kind of see what Denmark is like. I can't just accept immediately because I don't know if that's the right place for me. And so we ended up going over to Denmark, but not before I was offered a studio company position by Kevin Mackenzie, who was the director of American Ballet Theatre at that point. Now, John Meehan, who was the studio company director, hadn't seen me, so there was a little bit of a iffy thing there. And I decided to go over to Denmark and try it out. Turns out it was not the place for me. I didn't really enjoy being in the city. It didn't feel right. It wasn't the right vibe. And so I came back and I reached out to studio company. I said I'd like to come and take class there. And when John Meehan saw me, he said, oh, look, you look a little bit too young. You're too kind of not strong enough really for what we're looking for studio company, so we can offer you the JKO school at this point, but we're not really going to continue into the studio company. We're taking that offer back. So an offer was put forward, and then it was rescinded, which can happen, guys. It can definitely be a part of this industry. And I decided at that point that it wasn't right to go for that, but maybe San Francisco Ballet was going to be an option. And I had already auditioned for the summer program that I was going to do that year just to see what was coming. I'd heard that they were going to be creating a trainee program, and I had hoped that maybe that would be something that would work for me. So I went into the summer program, and again, it was the same kind of response as ABT, that I was not quite strong enough, not really what they thought would be physically able to handle what was coming at me for that kind of program. So I decided not to do that either, and I actually went back to Kirov for another year and just did ballet. So I didn't have any academics, obviously, because I'd already graduated from high school. And so I went and I did just the ballet at Kirov with the same teacher. And in January of 2005, we walked into class, and I remember him saying to us, boys, you have to get a flight to Vienna. You have to go and travel there. They're having an audition, and you have to be there on Friday. Right? It was like Monday. So we all got tickets to go to Vienna. We all got on a plane, and we flew to Vienna, Austria. And lo and behold, 2 of us got a position in the company as corps de ballet. And that was it. That was my start, right? So after all of these, having started ballet at the age of 5, training and pushing through Marin Ballet and pushing into Kirov and then graduating and being successful there, at the age of 17, I was offered a position as a corps de ballet dancer with the Vienna State Opera. And I ended up accepting it, and my professional career started under Gyula Harangozo Jr. in September 2005 at the Vienna State Opera. Now, this is where things got interesting, because I got there, and the other boy that I was there with, my roommate at the time, he got a lot of roles initially. Like he was doing, I think they put him up to dance like Peasant Paw and Giselle, and they were pushing him quite a bit. He was a bit shorter, looked a little bit stronger than I did. And I was basically put into like the cover for the guy walking across the stage. So I was not pushed forward very fast. I was held back. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not just going to sit around all day. Like, what's the point of being here, being paid, and not working? Like, why would I sit around and wait to get an offer, to do more, right? So I went into the rehearsals that I wasn't called to. If it was a corps de ballet rehearsal and there was corps de ballet in there, I went in, I learned the steps, I did what I had to do to make sure that it looked like I wanted to be there. And in doing that, there was actually a demi-soloist in the the peasant dance from Giselle that didn't want to be a part of that. And so he basically said to me, look, I don't want to do this, so Shane, why don't you go in for me today? And that happened first day, and then it happened the next day, and then it happened the next day, and it happened the next day. And eventually it got to the point where, you know, I was doing it quite a bit, and they were seeing that I was very quick to jump in. And so they realized that I was not just wanting to sit around and be lazy, that I actually wanted to dance. And I actually started to get a lot of offers from, as far as the placement was concerned, to move forward. So I got opportunities within the company to do more featured roles. I got to do Friends in Coppelia, which was more featured, and then things progressed, and eventually by the end of the year there was a demi-soloist who was moving up to do Onegin that they wanted me to then do his place in Swan Lake, which was the pas de cinq in Nureyev Swan Lake. So at 18, after starting my year very restricted and not doing much, I had progressed to doing pas de cinq. Now, unfortunately, I ended up breaking my foot in a choreo lap that year, and I didn't get to do more than maybe 2 performances of pas de cinq. And that was a little bit of a setback, but I'd already kind of established myself as that person who was willing to jump in, willing to push themselves, take things to a newer height. And that set me up very well for my start in my career. And I pushed myself forward. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of roles. I worked with a lot of different people. And eventually got to the point, I think it was in 2008, I went to the director and I said, look, you know, I'm doing a lot of demi-soloist roles. I'm reliable. I'm here all the time. I think it's time to be promoted. And this is a good lesson that I think is important to kind of pick up on. Like if we pause here and say, okay, what's the lesson in this? Sometimes you have to ask for the opportunity. And it's not always going to be the opportunity that you want. It's not always going to be the response that you expect. But I asked for it and the opportunity came, right? And in doing that, there were things that were said to me that, you know, I thought at the time, okay, well now I have to adjust this or change that. Like, he said my ears didn't seem to be the right size for a prince, that didn't look handsome enough, that I was more comedic looking. And so he wanted me to grow my hair out to cover up my ears to make me look more like a prince. And so I did that. And then that, you know, it's like we play these games, right? We play these games with people, and people get played to have certain appearance to make them feel better about the way you look. You know, some of the stuff that I've been told about the color of my skin being too white, or being too tall, or looking boring because I have small eyes and I don't look, you know, I don't have this grandiose open appearance, right? It's all stuff that still gets done within the dance industry, and it's not something that is going away, I think, anytime soon. But it's unfortunate, and I think, you know, if we can highlight it, we can say, hey, these are things, guys, that, you know, they actually don't have any impact on our artistry. They don't have any impact on our ability to dance. Why do you care about the size of my ears or the color of my skin? Why is that a problem? But it does come up, and people get really nasty about it. Anyway, I got the promotion. I moved forward. Things were going really well. I was doing principal roles. I got the opportunity to dance Siegfried in Swan Lake. I was doing, you know, all kinds of great stuff. And then I broke my foot again right as the director was changing. So Herrengoza was moving out and Manuel Legris was coming in, and it was a performance of Meyerling, and I did a double Sotobosk, and I landed badly, and that was like the 5th metatarsal was fractured, but I finished the performance. So that happens too. Like, you'll be on stage, you hurt yourself. If you don't want the curtain to come down, sometimes you got to keep dancing. Sometimes you got to keep pushing through and challenge yourself. So I pushed through. Probably was the most painful 10 minutes or so that I've ever experienced. My quadriceps were so tense because I was doing double tours on the broken foot, and like I was trying to absorb all that energy in my legs without you know, putting too much pressure into my foot. But I got through it. I was wheeled out, and basically I was off for the rest of the season. It was maybe a month left, and that was it. I was not going to dance again. And then I came back in September for the new season with the new director, and I went from basically doing all principal roles to being basically back in the core, right? Like I was still a demi-soloist, so Manuel looked at it more at that time around being a featured quarter ballet position as opposed to the soloist position that Herrengoza had been looking at demi-soloist as. And it was almost a year of that. Like, I didn't do a lot of featured stuff. There was maybe every now and then I'd get to do something that I'd already danced that they just didn't want to switch me out on. But I didn't get to do a lot of new featured work. And so we got to the end of the season, and this opportunity arose to do Giselle and Albrecht and Giselle. So I was playing paintball with the guys in the company, and I get a phone call from Manuel Legris, and it's like, all of our principals are injured and we need you to learn Albrecht. We only have 9 days. Do you think you can do it? And again, lesson alert, right? I could have said, oh, well, 9 days is not enough time. I don't think I can. But instead I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll figure it out. Let's do it. And I did, and it went quite well. Like, this is the thing, and this is a lesson I often will bring up with my students. It's like, opportunities will arise. You have to decide if it's the right one, but basically say yes and figure out how to do it, right? Because opportunities don't always knock twice, and that might have been like that sliding door opportunity, right? That was that time when it was like, well, had I said no, maybe I would have then been always pigeonholed into that period of, hey, you're not going to move forward anymore. That's it, you're a demi-soloist, you're not going to move forward. Instead, it set off this chain of events where it was like, injury, can you jump in? Injury, can you jump in? Injury, can you jump in? And I think across the next 18 months, I must have jumped in 5 or 6 times into main roles, which culminated in me jumping into Sleeping Beauty as the prince, and doing it in 2 days with 2 different partners, and then getting promoted to soloist with the company. And now, at the exact same time that all of this was happening in my professional life, my dad was again sick, okay, and they were still back in California, and life was really tough. And so I had to come up with the next choice, which was either stay in Vienna and continue to develop professionally there under this amazing directorship, or I had to make the choice of, do I need to spend more time with my family? Do I need to be closer to my dad, at this point in his life? And so I made the decision to move from Vienna to San Francisco, and we shifted, Marie-Claire, my wife, and we shifted from Vienna to San Francisco Ballet. And I transitioned over as a soloist. And the first day of class, right? So we get there, and I'm really excited for the company. I'm really excited to be a part of this place that I had tried to be a part of so many times before as a younger dancer. Now I was a soloist with the company. Like, this is a great honor. And I walk in, and the ballet master says to me, yeah, look, we thought you'd be a bit bulkier. Like, you don't look to be very strong. We're gonna have to bulk you up, all right? And so again, body image, right? Like, body image just chases you through this career. It follows you everywhere. It's people, I find, and this is my take on it, people tend to project their insecurities onto others about their own body image. And I could see that he also wanted to be very bulky. He was often in the gym. He had more muscle than any of the other ballet masters. And so he probably looked at me and thought, you don't fit the image of what I think is a dancer, and so I'm going to make you feel like you need to change. And I spent the first season in San Francisco Ballet feeling like I needed to change. And so my wife and I, we came back to Australia that summer after my first season, and I just went to town. I ate as much as I could. I did as much as I could training-wise. I was in the gym every day, and I probably put on about 10 kilos. Not all of it was muscle, but I got bigger. And I come back and then, oh yeah, you look really good now. But of course, there's an opposite side to that effect, which was at the time that I probably hadn't put on the strength that I needed to then handle my heavier body weight. And so I ended up with knee problems. And then those knee problems followed me through for the rest of my dance career as well. So I developed some pretty bad patella tendinopathy, and it would come and go. It wasn't always there, but it got to the point where it was very difficult to handle, but we'll get to that in a minute. So second year in the company, things were not progressing. I was not moving forward. It didn't seem like it was going to be the place that I had hoped it would be. Personal life was great. I was loving, my relationship with Marie-Claire. I was loving experiencing and living in California. However, the actual element of dance, what my love was, my love in life, my passion, was not where I wanted it to be. And so the next thought process was, well, okay, we've tried my home. Why don't we try Marie-Claire's? And so we reached out to Li Xuanxin from Queensland Ballet, and we came over. We did a whirlwind trip. It was a 2-day trip from San Francisco to Australia. And if any of you know what that's like, basically you get in, it's the day after, and you get back and it's practically the same day that you left, right? Like you're just, it's a whirlwind. You don't know what ends up. But we came in, we took class, and look, I distinctly remember the meeting that we had at that point, which was, Lee said to us, look, we don't really have any contracts because the contracts run differently, but Shane, you definitely deserve to be a principal, and Marie-Claire, you definitely deserve to be a soloist, and I think let's have a chat in a couple of months. I'll reach out to you by the end of April, and I'll let you know. And he did. He reached out, and basically it was, Shane, we'll have you in as a soloist. Marie-Claire, we don't have a contract for you at this point, but we'll see, right? Like we'll see what happens in the future. And so Marie-Claire didn't need one to come home to Australia because she was Australian, but I obviously needed the job. So that was the best situation that we could hope for at that point, was at least I would have something and we would come and we would figure it out. And so I came and I joined Queensland Ballet, and it was mid-season. So at that point, really, I'd been dancing, almost an entire year and didn't have any time to really rest. I finished a tour in Paris and France, and I got on the plane and I came right over to Australia, and I continued to dance for another 4 months. So it was almost a year and a half before I got any type of rest time. And I was very happy with the company at that point. It was a smaller company. It was a different type of process. There was a lot more opportunity, again, because it was smaller and I was a soloist, that I was getting to dance principal roles. And so I was quite happy with that development. And things went well. By the following year, I got promoted to principal. And things were really working out quite well, and then things started to get strange. So casting started to go funny. I started to feel like I wasn't being respected well enough, and I made probably a stupid decision at the time, which was to go and take class with the Australian Ballet. And I didn't say anything to the directorship at Queensland Ballet, and it was a mistake, because they found out and they were very unhappy with me, and to the point that it was basically like, look, if you hadn't signed your contract, we would have fired you for this. And so it was difficult. It was a really difficult time where I felt like I had betrayed them. They probably felt betrayed by me, and then that led to the following season. I was second cast for the first production, then I was third cast, then I was fourth cast, and then by the time we got to almost the end of the year with La Fille Garde being the last production, I wasn't even cast for the main character. And I remember being called into my mid-year interview and basically, being told, hey, look, we just don't see you as a principal dancer, like your artistry is not good enough and all this stuff. And again, it was this process of, I'd put all my hopes and dreams into something, made a mistake, and it's that sliding door. It's like, had I not gone to Australian Ballet, would that have happened? Would I have been led to that process? And so I ended up not being renewed. That was, it ended up not continuing, and it was very unfortunate because my very last performance on the stage, so this was my last, my exit from ballet, was dancing the grandfather in La Fille Garde, which is not really a dancing role, it's a walk-on role, twice on my birthday. I was supposed to do more that year, but I ended up injuring myself, unfortunately, and so I didn't get to really have an exit from the stage. And I came and went, and that was it. That was the end of my dance career. And I say this not because I'm disgruntled, not because I'm angry, but I think I have not talked about what happened, and without going into more detail, it was a very difficult time because I went from being the sole earner to now having to retrain. I was not prepared for my career to end. I was 30. I was a young, very young man. I was at the height of my career potentially, and so there were opportunities potentially to go and dance elsewhere. Maybe I could have moved again, but again, that would have been moving my entire family. I had a 1-year-old child at the time, moving my entire family, possibly internationally again. And I just said, you know what, no, it's not, that's it. I need to stop, I need to move on. And so I became a personal trainer, which I think, for me, it was kind of like hey, what do I do now? I don't have any qualifications in anything else in dance. I could teach ballet, but I feel like I need to separate myself from it, because at this point, I feel like I have disappointed myself in the art form, and how am I going to be able to help people within that art form if I am at that point in my own mind? And so I went into personal training, and it was illuminating the next 12 to 18 months, because what happened was I went from being this very self-centered, internal, quiet, not outgoing introvert who could put anything on stage but wasn't really, I didn't have that connection with people that other people have, that natural just walk into a room, be able to talk with anybody kind of situation. And I had to come out of that shell in order to coach people, in order to help them, in order to be able to take someone from overweight or depressed or broken to someone who is, winning competitions, body transformation competitions. I had people who went from being massively overweight and on the basically the precipice of suicide to winning a $10,000 prize in a body transformation competition, and changing his entire life. And that was recognized by, I received the Personal Trainer of the Year award that year without even having been a personal trainer for an entire year. So I started to think and have that confidence start to build back up in me. Like I started to feel like, oh, okay, I'm not useless. I'm not someone who people don't have any need for, right? Because that's how I had left Queensland Ballet. I felt like, they don't want me. I don't want to be. They don't want me to be here. That I don't fit their mold for what they see as a principal dancer. And I felt rejected by the dance world. And now I was being welcomed by people who I was helping to change their lives. And so, whether that was the case or not, whether that was what Queensland Ballet felt or not, that was my internal battle, right? Those were the demons that I was fighting with. And I needed to get to this point where now I could re-enter into a dance capacity. And I started to teach some students, but from a fitness perspective, because one of the things that was passionate for me was, well, I also had this knee problem. I also had injuries in my career that no one really guided me on how to deal with. No one really said, well, okay, so this knee problem, here's what we need to do to strengthen your quadriceps to make sure that you're healthy and able to do the jumps. Oh, you're coming back from a foot injury, here's your rehab process. Like that never happened for me. And I know it does for some dancers, but for me, it wasn't there. And so I wanted to educate young dancers in how to make sure that they were able to take care of their bodies, how to protect themselves, how to take their abilities in the studio to the next level by facilitating that with the cross training that was necessary outside of the studio to keep them healthy enough to be able to work on their skills and not get injured. And so that was my next step. And it eventually actually led to me deciding to start adult ballet classes as well. So right at the beginning of 2020, before COVID hit, I started running adult ballet classes because I wanted to re-enter into the dance teaching element, but I didn't want to work with students yet, because if I learned anything from personal training, it was that if you can teach an adult to do movement patterns, then you can teach anyone to do movement patterns, because we ingrain these movement patterns in our bodies and it's very difficult to change them. And when you can teach an adult to do it, you can teach a child. So I started these adult classes, everything got shut down in COVID, and I took everything online. And then when we opened back up here in Brisbane, I found a little, basically room at the back of a football club, and I put a dance studio together. And for almost 2 years, I ran adult ballet classes, I ran yoga, I ran Pilates at Athletistry Studio. So that was my next development, right? Like that was the next evolution, shall we say, the Athletistry Ballet evolution. So I started this process of teaching adults and working with adults. And then kids started to come. And it wasn't that I reached out to parents and said, hey, I'm offering kids programs. They actually started to reach out to me and say, hey, we see that you've got this studio. Do you offer this for ballet students, or is it only for adults? And so I started to get some private lessons, and then the opportunity presented itself to maybe start to offer more kids classes. And so I started with a boys class because that was really important to me as a young man. With Mikko Nissinen, the boys classes that he offered way back at Marin Ballet, it fueled that fire for me to want to be a dancer. Like it wasn't being in the room with the girls and putting on tutus and pretending to be butterflies that was interesting. It was, pretending to be the soldier and marching and doing double tours and jumps and that athletic element. That was what gave me the fire for dance. And so that was something that I started to offer. I offered boys classes, I offered, kids classes, and then again, like COVID just got too restrictive, and so I couldn't do it anymore, and I took everything online. And so here we are, 2023. Social media has exploded. People probably know me from Instagram, from the things that I've done with my tips and tutorials, and the growth and the progress that has had. And I wouldn't have changed any of it, guys. I think sometimes we look back on our lives and we say, oh, had I done it this way, maybe I would have gotten this outcome, or maybe I shouldn't have done this, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But realistically, all roads lead to where we stand. Everything that we have chosen will take us to this position. And the choices that I made led to me becoming a more well-rounded human being, led to me learning about myself, led to me learning about what I have to offer. And so now what I plan to do with this, and what I plan to do to help you guys, to bring you to the next level, is to help you evolve from my learning, from the things that I've experienced, from the people that I've worked with. And so over the course of the coming weeks, months, years, hopefully this continues for a long time, I will be doing interviews. I'll be bringing people on to have conversations, and I will continue to teach from the lessons that I have learned as an artist, as a trainer, as a coach, a mentor, and a father. So I want to thank you guys for listening. Please go down, hit that subscribe button so that you're notified when the next episode comes out. I hope you've enjoyed this. I have definitely enjoyed telling my story. I'm sure we'll get into more detail about other stuff as we go on. But thank you so much for listening, guys. Until next time, this has been Athletistry Ballet Evolution.